Okay, so we're on. So it's Julie here from Do Business Like a Woman, and I've got Tad Hargrave with me today of Marketing for Hippies, and I am really excited. Thank you, Tad, for agreeing to do this interview. And I came across Tad's work a few months ago, in fact, when I was surfing the internet, because I'm big into marketing. However, I found that a lot of what I've learned through the gurus about marketing and the practices that I've been told felt very kind of sleazy to me and, not good in a lot of ways. And so when I came across your website, Tad, I was just really, really excited and really inspired, and there is so much free quality content on your site. It is really quite astounding. And so I read everything I could, downloaded your ebook, the way of the radical business, and I'm still reading that because it's quite a piece of content, but again, just loads of value, really, really good reading. And so I emailed you and I was asking lots and lots of questions, and you said, why not just interview me so that other people can benefit from your questions too? And I thought that was a fantastic idea. So here we are. So welcome, Tad.
Thank you. So good to be here. I find myself curious if you could give some examples of the things you heard from other people that didn't feel good for you or felt off, or maybe that you tried that ended up not feeling good. I'm just curious for some more context on that.
Sure. So prior to the business offering that I give now, I was a business coach, and I did a very expensive kind of coaching course, and we were taught about sales and marketing, and I was doing discovery calls, selling quite high priced coaching programs, and it was just some of I guess there were tactics that we were taught within those sales calls, the process that we took people through. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just that it wasn't a fit for me, and it was just something about it felt very off. So it would feel like putting a lot of pressure on people, and there would be sort of this, well, if you don't do it now, then you're going to be an utter failure and nothing's ever going to work for you, and it just didn't sit right with me. It felt like putting a lot of pressure on people and not really letting them make up their own minds. And so that was really one of my experiences. And then also just within copywriting, because I do a lot of copywriting, just some of the tactics, the scarcity kind of marketing and the fear-based marketing. So when I came across your approach, it just feels very different to me. And I'm really interested in your philosophy and your take on marketing. So can you tell us a bit about that?
There's a lot to say. But I want to go back to this. When you're doing the discovery calls, can you say more about what kinds of specific tactics or ways you'd be invited to frame it, or I'm just curious if you can give any more color and any more detail on that.
I'm just trying to remember back. I can remember, because it was a few years ago, but I can remember being on the phone with people for very long periods of time. And there were, I don't want to mention any names of the people I trained under, because as I say, I don't think there's anything wrong with what they're teaching. It's just not a fit for me. But it was... So let me think. So it was things like, well, what will happen if you don't do this now? And it was about getting them to say, like all the reasons that they wanted to do it, but all the negative consequences that wouldn't happen if they didn't take it now. And, get them to think that if they went away and didn't accept the offer now, they never would. And they would just be stuck with the problem forever.
And would they, was there often a pricing thing? Like if you sign up today, right now in this call, there's a deal that doesn't exist if you don't say now? Or?
Yes, there was definitely an element of that too. And bonuses that you would only get if you signed up today.
How did you even connect with these people?
The people that I learned the tactics from. So it was in the kind of online transformational coaching world, and I've always been really into the law of attraction and that side of things. So I can't remember exactly how I came across, these particular programs, but there were things about them that were a real fit for me, entrepreneurial lifestyle, freedom, that kind of thing.
I was meaning more the people you talk to. Like, how did the sessions get booked?
How did the sessions get booked? So how did they actually come to be on a call with me, do you mean?
Yeah.
All right, so quite often they would have come through my website, something like that. And so again, often it was to say, oh, I've got 5 spots that I'm opening up and there are just 5 spaces, when actually, that isn't true. There could be unlimited spaces for those calls. So even that kind of didn't feel authentic to me. It didn't feel honest. What's your take on that?
On the scarcity piece? Well, the best take I've seen on scarcity was in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence. And he pointed out that, just life is scarce, that's the reality of it. We've got so many years that we live. We've got so many hours. If you're doing a workshop, there's only so many people you can hold. Could you move the venue? Yeah, that might be a pain in the ass. You may not want to, so there may only be 30 spots, or you've only got so many hours a week you can do coaching. It's not limitless. We're not bottomless. So, but then when you start talking about like PDFs or things like this, well, it's not limitless, but we're approaching that, So when there's genuine scarcity, it's important to name it. When we're manufacturing scarcity, that's, I think, where it moves into the unethical or just dishonest. Only 10 copies of this PDF. What? Only 10 copies of this hardcover that I've signed and got specially printed. Sure. So yeah, often that distinction isn't made, but it's important to remember sometimes people actually get upset if they don't know the scarcity is there when it's really there. I've had a number of people be like, oh, if I'd known there were only so few spaces, I would have signed up sooner. I wish you told me. And right. People get kind of pissy with me. So
it's about being honest, really.
Yeah.
And saying if there is scarcity.
Yeah, it's like, because it's just a real thing. Scarcity exists. So, and it, I do a mentorship program. There are 12 spaces in it. Could I have more? Technically, sure. Technically, I could have 1 million people in it, but it wouldn't be what I want it to be. So I've chosen 12 people because that's the number that feels right. So yeah, there are 12 spots. I do, one-on-one coaching, but I only have like 6 to 10 spaces available a month to do it. So yeah, that's a real scarcity. It's fine to mention. But yeah, when it's like, and then it's like a weekend workshop. You've got a ballroom that can fit 500 and you've got 5 people signed up and you're saying, act now, it's filling fast. And that's not true. Right. So there is so much of a pretense in marketing that's designed to get people to do something,
Yes. And we see that so often. I see it so often, and I never really know if it's true. We're filling up fast. We're down to the last spaces. And I think, well, it could be true or it may not. So.
Yeah, or, one of my colleagues, they sent out a message, or they had a message you could send out. It was all about how to get more referrals. And one of the messages that you could send out was, hey, I was just thinking about you the other day, was the start of it. And then you would fill in the rest. And someone reached out to me, and this was one of the freebies they gave as an intro to their programs. And one of my clients was like, well, this doesn't seem honest, because I wasn't necessarily thinking about him. I was like, yeah, it's not honest. It's not true. But, if you were to, let's say, come up with a program or some offering, and then you sat down and you asked yourself, okay, which clients of mine might this be a fit for? And you kind of meditate on that, go through like people who've been through your workshops, people you've coached in the past, make a list. certain names would jump out at you. And then you could email them saying like, look, I've got this program and I totally want you in it.
Yeah.
That's genuine.
Yeah.
So you could say,
thinking about
I was thinking about you the other day, and it would be true. So, it's funny, when I replied to this client of mine who was having these concerns or wonderings about it, I CC'd those colleagues who suggested it. They were not happy with me. I think we're still friends, but they definitely were like, we should talk on the phone soon.
Right.
So there's all this stuff that it's not that sending someone an email saying, hey, I was just thinking about you is wrong. It's just, was it true?
Yeah, right. And I think that was where the disconnect came in for me, is that I place high value on honesty and truth. So to be kind of marketing and saying things that weren't true just felt out of alignment. So that's really interesting. And I think you received that now as well, the one that says, I was just thinking about you.
Well, and just to throw in there, I think deeper than this, there's this thought that I have to be dishonest in order to sell or in order to market. I have to say, I have to say things that are not true because I couldn't just send everyone a forum email. So I've got to give the pretense. I've got to use their name, even though it's just the computer program putting their name like, hey, John, I was just thinking about you the other day. And that's not true in my experience. That's not my belief that you have to do that. Yeah, and then when we're talking about these fake, like, oh, this bonus, if you sign up today, to me, it just misses so much of the whole point in marketing, which is the goal of, the reason marketing, I think, feels so terrible is because the goal of it is to get people to say yes, to get people to sign up, to get people to buy. And in my mind, that is not the goal. The goal is to filter. The goal is to fundamentally to see if it's a fit, to get to that truth. So I could still see doing a discovery session with somebody, doing an hour-long call, and then saying, so I'm curious, what's your sense if you don't do this? What is your sense of what's going to happen or what that might cost you if you don't? There's nothing biased in that question, if you're really curious, if you really want to know. But then to me, if you really want to know, you would also ask the question, and what's going to happen if you do sign up? Like, could there be a cost to you signing up? But really wanting to know.
Yeah.
It's like, if I sign up for this, I actually won't have money for food or won't have money for rent or, it's like, okay, well, maybe this is not a good idea, So it's still getting to the truth of like, I'm really trying to figure out, is this a fit or not? That's the whole goal.
Yeah. So it sounds a little bit like it's the intention behind it as well, kind of the energy of it, so as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I'm really looking for it to be the best fit for the client, the best fit for me, and the right thing. And, particularly looking out for the client's needs as well, rather than coming with an energy of, I've got to sell it, I've got to get them to say yes, which is fundamentally what is taught in marketing, certainly a lot of mainstream marketing.
Yeah, it's the sad thing, because when I started doing this business 15, 16 years ago, or when I first started learning marketing 20 years ago, all of it, all the stuff that gets made fun of in this kind of conscious business scene, I was learning it, the Tom Hopkins, the Brian Tracy, the Zig Ziglar, the Tony Robbins, all this stuff, which explicitly was saying the goal is to get people to say yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Get the sale, go for the close. And then we see this new generation of conscious heart-based marketing, that the language has changed, but the goal has not changed.
Right. So it's actually no different, and it still is not really being honest if the goal has not changed.
And it's funny. It's not only no different. In some ways, it feels worse because it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. People are like hearing heart-based and conscious and loving and all these buzzwords, and so the guard goes down a bit, and then there's the same. Like, why would you say there's a bonus if you sign up today if it wasn't to get somebody to say yes? And I'm not saying don't offer bonuses. I'm not saying don't give people incentives. But fundamentally, the engine or the orientation has to be, first, is it a fit? There's 3 roles in marketing. I got this from a book, Monopolize Your Marketplace. And this is my rendition of it. first goal in marketing, first role it's got to play is it's got to get their attention. If they don't know about you or your offer, there's no point. Number two, it's got to filter. It's got to help establish if it's a fit. It's got to facilitate their decision-making process and your own too, if it's going to work. Number three, it's got to lower the risk of them taking the first step. It's got to make it really easy, because sometimes you can have their attention, it can 100% be a fit, and you both know it, but there's just too much risk. It's a little too scary for them to take the leap.
Okay, could you give examples of that? What might be an example of that where it's too high risk?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's say I want to sign up for this program around more authentic living and deeper wisdom. And yet and I'm married. But then I talked to a bunch of my friends who've been through it, and they're all going through divorces because they went through the program when their spouse didn't. That's a real risk. What if I sign up for this year-long membership at a gym and then I don't end up going? What if you come in with a promise to fix my computer systems for my business, but instead of making it better, you ruin it? What if I spend a whole weekend at your workshop and it's a waste of time? Or you pressure me into things? Or what if I sign up for this anonymous group for people with addictions and then it gets out that I'm in it, et cetera, et cetera, There's a lot of legitimate reasons why people would experience a risk, a fear of some kind of loss if they were to say yes to you. So,
and that first example you gave is actually really spot on, I think, for a lot of people in the personal development space, because if one partner's growing and the other one isn't, there is a genuine risk that can happen, Yeah. That was a really example you gave.
Yeah, so we've got to, the way to reduce that risk, sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can speak to it, you can name it so that people know that you know. You can say, look, because we found this dynamic, your spouse gets in at half the price, or, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes just saying, look, if you come rock climbing with us, there's a chance you will die or seriously injure yourself. Here's everything we've done to handle that. And there's still a risk. I don't know, there's something very candid and honest about that. So people can make their own decision. But this is more actually about filtering than the risk piece. Because if there's a risk you can't handle, you just need to let people know. This is just real. There's a chance this will go.
Yes, so transparent as well.
Sorry, one second. Hold on. The sound is crazy.
Okay. I'm getting a tour of your home. It looks lovely. Are you hearing okay?
The sound is terrible. I'm just going to put it in your phone. See if that helps.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, that's a lot better, I think.
Yeah, excellent.
So so that becomes part of the filtering. Like, are you willing to accept the risks that are involved in this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. And why do you think it is that we as conscious entrepreneurs, green businesses, struggle so much with our marketing?
Because it feels gross, because we haven't seen a lot of good examples. We don't know how to do it. We imagine that it's all about pushing people somehow. Yeah, it's I think, a lot of the way it gets framed is that it's about confidence, that if you're not getting enough clients, and maybe you just don't believe in yourself enough, so sign up for my program where I can teach you how to believe in yourself, and do you believe in your value and all of that. But it could also be that it's competence. And that's my experience, is most of the time it's actually just about competence.
Competence in marketing specifically, right?
Yeah, people don't know how to do it in a way that feels good.
Yeah.
So it's similar. It's why there's all these dating coaches, who are out there, because people don't know what to do.
Right.
You're sitting there, you see somebody you're attracted to, and you're like, I just literally can't imagine a scenario. Like, what do I do? I get up, I walk over, and then I just say hello. Is that it? Or if they look at me funny, what would I say? So I won't do it. Or, it'd be like if I said, hey, can you grab that leather hide over there? Or that sheep hide? Yeah, we just took it off the sheep. And could you tan it for me? The brains are there. The scraping tool is that, what I'm saying? You just be like, and no amount of confidence in the world. And in fact, people with a lot of confidence but not much competence are dangerous. And I think the scene is full of them.
Yes, that's so true, because it's like they're then creating businesses and selling things and, positioning themselves as an expert when actually they don't have the competence to do that. So I really like that distinction that you've made there. And I think it's true. There's a lot of people making a lot of money from people's insecurities, that they don't have enough belief in themselves. That is,
Yeah, people will. Sorry, I'm just getting my plug-in cord. People will say this to me, come to me all the time, as if the problem that they have is like, well, I guess I just don't value myself enough. Which I imagine they heard from some coach who was telling them that was the core of their problems. Like, oh, if you just valued yourself, like then you could charge more, you could, yada yada yada. But in my experience, it came down to a certain like there was one colleague of mine who he does a lot of spiritual meditation, self-inquiry work, and he would do these a meetup in his living room like once a week, and people come, maybe 12 people, very sweet. And he knew, of course, that the people who were coming to those meetups would be great for his 5-day, 10-day retreats. But then he just had this like, how do I bring it up? Because it felt strange with them being in his living room to then launch into a pitch. So he wouldn't do it. And so we talked about it. I said, well, it's like, if there's just 12, could you just like have the list of names, and after they're gone, or the next day, but just sit down and meditate on each name for a minute. And just to see, like, is there anything that comes up that I could offer that would be useful? And maybe it's an article that you should send them. Maybe it's a book you want to recommend to them. A quote you want to send. Maybe there's nothing, or maybe it's your 10-day retreat. You sit with their name. You're like, man, I really want them there. Yep. Then you email them. It's like, look, I was thinking about you this morning, and then it's genuine. And I just think this program could be a fit. And here's the link. Let me know if you have any questions, but I would love to have you there. So as soon as I said that, he was like, oh, I could totally do that.
Cool. And did he do it?
I believe he did. Yeah. I don't know how often he still does the meetup groups, but this is the kind of thinking, where it's like, or it's the reason he couldn't do it had nothing to do with believing in himself or valuing himself. It was a mechanical thing.
Right. He just didn't know how to bring it up, how to approach it. And it goes back to what you were saying, that it would have been a terrible shame if he didn't say something, because there might have been people in that 12 who really could benefit from that program that he was offering. So I think oftentimes conscious entrepreneurs hold back and don't say anything, and we're doing a disservice in that way as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be there and people are curious, it's good for them to know what the next steps are, because this will happen where I've just seen it. Yeah, people don't say anything, and then people are like, but I wanted to, what was their name? Who was that masked man? There is that. And I had another one where I was talking with a rabbi who he does a lot of coaching too, but he speaks at different synagogues and churches too. And he was like, I've got these online programs, but I feel weird mentioning them. And I was like, well, couldn't the host do that for you?
Right. Perfect.
At the end of the talk, say, hey, if you like what he had to say, he's actually got some online programs.
he doesn't live in town with us, but you can still work with him. And here's the website to check out. And there's a program. When's that coming up again, Michael? Oh, great. It's coming up this date. And he just instantly was like, oh, it's like, of course, I could do that. They would love it. They would love to help me. And it was an immediate, easy thing. So sometimes it's just, there's a very simple approach. And so, I said to him, is like, look, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling awkward about it. That is an awkward thing to pitch. It's always awkward to pitch yourself. Right. Or, let's say, for example, with networking, people feel very strange going to a networking event to promote themselves.
But you have to stand up and give your little elevator speech. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's or just a mingling event. And it's just, for most people, that is awkward to go to an event, shake hands, hand out business cards, try to pitch yourself. But what if you went to that event with somebody else and you got to know each other's businesses well, and you networked for them and they networked for you? You know what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden it feels really good, because it's so much more exciting to network for your pal, and you can rave about them and say things about them that it would be utterly inappropriate for them to say about themselves.
Right.
They can rave about you in ways that you could never say. Like, just imagine what it would sound like if I were to say about myself what I might say about a friend. They're like, hey man, we should meet. Oh my God, I'm awesome. You would love me. Oh my God, we would totally get along. We should go for, it makes no sense. But so it's just, it's a mechanical shift.
Yeah, it's just making me laugh, because I had it earlier where I was on a call with a potential client, and I was actually talking about another client of mine and talking about her services and really raving about her and saying, she's amazing, she's just fantastic. And, it would feel ridiculously awkward to be saying that about yourself. It just wouldn't be quite right. So yeah, I totally get that. I think that's fantastic. I love the idea of networking for each other. So that's a good, thank you. Super cool. I know we've got limited time today, and this is like a huge conversation, but just from your ebook, can you say a little bit about the suicide economy?
Yeah, well, that's the mainstream economy. That's the dominant economy we have. That phrase is coined by David Corton, who wrote "When Corporations Rule the World," and just this idea that there is this economy that is, it's not just that it's killing everything, it's also killing itself. It's an economy that is fundamentally based on turning living things into dead things, mountaintops into pop cans, trees into paper, people into numbers. And there's this kind of, green or conscious economy that's growing out of it that a lot of us are trying to transition into. And yet the reality is probably 95% of our money is spent there, 95% of our money is earned from it. So this is to me one of the biggest heartbreaks I see of conscious people in the world right now, who are kind of waking up to what's actually going on and feeling utterly trapped. But that's part of the deal of the suicide economy. Is one of the first things it does, whether you call it suicide economy or colonization or empire or dominant hegemony, whatever you want to call it. One of its first moves is to cut off the escape routes. One of its first actions is to make sure there's nowhere else you can go. That it has the monopoly over everything. So people say, well, I want to go live in the bush. It's great and it's fine until they find oil there, or until they want that land for farming, or until they deforest it, so it's a heartbreaking thing for so many people. I just did a weekend retreat, and there's a woman she's so politically radical and hates the thought. She just doesn't want to be making money. She wants to be ending homelessness in Atlanta. She's got no particular interest in participating in all this economy and capitalism and all this. And yet she has 2 kids, and she lives in an economy that requires this effort. And so, of course, Joanna Macy, great elder of our time, speaks about there's sort of 3 elements she calls of the great turning of this time that we're in, 3 types of work that are needed. And one is holding actions. So you're trying to stop or slow the juggernaut, at least draw attention to it. So protest, lockdown, sit-ins, etc. Then there's alternatives. So how else do we meet our needs?
Right.
Permaculture, is an example of that, or most holistic, medicine. And then the third part would be the shift in consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
everything from inner healing to decolonization. So all of those are needed. And there's some of us are trying to tear down the system, but it's a lot that's asked of us, because there is a need to tear the system down, but also build up something new, but also sustain ourselves in the meantime. And it's I don't know, frankly, it feels a little impossible, but it's for people who feel torn up about it, I just think that's proper. It's proper to feel torn up by the fact that we live in I am living in this house, and I don't probably need a house this big. I could probably live in a tiny home, but traditionally we'd be living, in very small houses as a village, but we'd have shared common space. In Scottish Highland culture, you'd have the Cayley houses, kind of community centers where people could gather for larger things. Or you might have a shared kitchen, and we don't. And I live in a neighborhood. I don't really know my neighbors. There's not a lot of shared worldview or culture, I imagine. And so this is where we're at, and we're all trying to make the best of it while shifting things, and it's enormously difficult.
It is. It's a challenge for us, and we're all trying to live our lives as well. I've got a car that I use that isn't perhaps as green as it could be, and I have ideas about things I want to do, but I still have to pay the bills like other people do. And I think, though, that this is, for me, really the deeper message and part of what we as conscious entrepreneurs are doing here and what we're here to do. And it certainly informs, my work. It's part of why I do what I do, because I want to see this transformation. And yes, it's a huge challenge, and sometimes it can feel really impossible. And I believe we all have to take personal responsibility and do what we can. That's all we can do for now. And I think a lot of the conscious businesses are providing alternatives. They're providing different solutions, and it might be starting small now, but it's got to start somewhere. And the other thing we're doing is raising awareness as well. So I really like that you said that. And we need to kind of get on and do it, all of us.
Amen. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I've got my list of questions. So what else did I really, really want to ask you? Okay. So just about attracting rather than chasing, going back into the marketing piece, you talk a lot about that. So just say a bit more about that now.
Yeah. It's, one of the fundamental, I think, metaphors unconsciously that we have for marketing is the searchlight. We're searching for clients, we're looking around for them, but of course people run away from searchlights. Another understanding of it would be the lighthouse that draws people in. One of my friends, Alexander, said, don't if you're trying to attract a bee, then you be a flower. Don't chase it with a net. Mm-hmm. Be the thing that is going to draw the bee to it. And so, of course, there's two parts of this, really. One is being a flower in that analogy, but the other is going somewhere where bees are. Right.
Mm-hmm. Just a little bit more about that. So the bees obviously are really the clients, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can't remember if it was Mark Joyner or Tom Antian said, if you had a hamburger stand and you could only have one competitive advantage, what would you want? And the only one worth having, because people say, well, organic, or it would be all local, or best sauces, or whatever. But the only one you really want is that your hamburger stand is right next to a hungry crowd.
Yeah.
Period.
The starving crowd, the hungry crowd. Absolutely.
That's what, so a similar thing. If you're going to be a flower, you'd want to be close to where the bees are. And if there's no bees, important. Or if you're going to get a lighthouse, you don't put a lighthouse in the middle of a desert. You put it on the shore where there's actually going to be ships.
So it's thinking about where your target audience are going to be, where your people are going to be, and making sure to show up there. And I know you talk a lot about hubs in your work as well. But I just love this idea of like attraction marketing. It's much more appealing to me. It made me think actually of a dating coach I follow and I really like, called Rory Ray, and she talks about, it's dating, so it's slightly different, but she talks about being the lighthouse and attracting and not chasing after. So I love that analogy. And yeah, I do with my work, I do a lot of integrating feminine energy into business, because I think that business, typical business, is very kind of masculine energy oriented, and set up a certain way, and it's not healthy. So I look to integrate some of the feminine energy practices, and love and into business, and that's not to do with being male and female, as I'm sure it's we all have both masculine and feminine energy, and I think that when we integrate feminine energy practices into our business, we can actually be more attractive and not have to be so chasing and doing and making the sale and closing the deal and all that. So that piece is very appealing to me.
Right. Well, the thing I would reflect back, I might say it a little different, is because there's a way that what you said could be construed as all the things we've just talked about that are dysfunctional about business are inherent in the masculine.
No, that isn't what I meant, but yeah, let's talk about that. So,
well, it's just, I think it's just good to parse apart that because I see it get thrown around in activism or in business, that somehow masculine is bad, feminine is good. Whereas to me, what we're talking about, this kind of inauthenticity in marketing, is something that's utterly outside of the domain of masculine or feminine. That it doesn't really relate to that. There are different styles and ways of appearing and showing up, and somebody could have a very masculine presence in business, whatever that means or however we define it, and be very attractive. And someone could have a very feminine presence, someone could have very sort of mixed or neutral or some other thing and be very attractive. To me, the thing is, David Data, speaks a lot about this whole idea that, I don't know if I totally go with this line of thought, but to spin it this way, this idea that people are born with a kind of core sexual essence, more masculine or more feminine. And if somebody's born with a real core masculine essence and is taught to be more feminine their whole life, they're going to suffer, and vice versa. You can expand that out. If we're born with any kind of core nature or quality or way of being, and that gets squashed and we're told that's not right, you shouldn't be this way, be this other way, we can develop a compensating personality, that's very people-pleasing, or that's very rough, and very aggressive. And there's something when there's an inconsistency between the internal reality of a person and the external shell they have, that's untrustworthy.
Right.
We pull back from.
About authenticity again now.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that seems to be at the core of certainly your message, and my message too, what I'm aiming for with my business. And just to kind of clarify, no, I don't think masculine energy is wrong at all. I think that both are needed in business, and it's just that talking about business as a whole rather than a specific person in business, I think that our society is set up to tend towards masculine energy practices. So very much a focus on doing and achieving and closing and forward momentum. And there's nothing wrong with that, except when it has no balance of feminine energy in there too. So, I think integrating the two to really make it holistic. But with an individual person, if they have a natural tendency towards being more masculine energy, that's fine, and that's going to be attractive, and they'll be authentic when they present that in their business. So I think it's about really knowing yourself, at the core of it as well. Would you say?
Yeah, well, I'd go with most of that, and I would just say that I don't think closing is necessarily more masculine.
Oh, interesting.
We get into very tricky ground. Gender is just one of the deepest mysteries of humanity. And so I feel very hesitant to even say anything about it. But I just would say I don't know if there is anything inherently masculine about this idea of closing the sale. That feels like it goes into some other domain that's closer to conversion, which certainly a lot of men have participated in throughout history, whether we're talking religious conversion or economic conversion, or there's something in this. I've never said it like this, but it's what you were talking about earlier when we started the call, of this idea of the discovery calls. And there's fundamentally this message of there's something wrong with you, but if you'll just sign up for my program, this will save you. And if you don't, you're going to be in hell. And is that what you want, to be in hell? It's it's not so different. And that to me doesn't have to do with male or female, because there are just as many women, I'm sure, throughout history who've also played into this game of conversion, and been on the delivering end of it in different ways. And that's the dynamic. There's such a fundamental lack of respect for the other person and for their own agency, for their own sovereignty. When you convert people at the point of a sword, and it's like, well, you either convert or you don't. Or, we look at what happened with the development of the white race or whiteness in North America, where the Irish and the Scottish and the Jews were not considered white for a long time in North America, but were essentially bribed because they wanted to divide the lower class. And it's like, you become white, then you can vote and you can own property and you can. So that same instinct, that same inclination shows up in sales, where we're still trying to get somebody to do something we want that benefits us.
Yeah.
And it's not about them anymore. And which is very different than saying, like, look, here's what I've got to offer. I put a lot of care into it. I think it could be really helpful for you. What do you think we should do? Is this a fit? Do you have any questions? Ari Galper, one of my colleagues, talked about it's the difference between a pitch and a conversation.
Right.
And it's so often in business, we get stuck in this pitch of trying to convince people. And marketing is not a convincing process. Marketing is not a seduction process. It's a conversation to get to the truth of, is this a fit? Can I help you? And the answer to that may legitimately be no. They may come to a point like, this isn't the program for me. And you might also get to a point where, well, you're not the client for me. This is not a good match. But it's the meeting of two very equal people trying to sort out, like you're saying, hey, I've got a livelihood, and so I offer this thing, and they're saying, well, I need help. Are you the one? And the there's just a fundamental, I think, fear that people have of not being able to sustain themselves, which has these tactics appear. But some of the fear of that is, it's often that people actually aren't that good at what they do yet. And we don't have apprenticeship anymore. We don't have people really learning and becoming very good at what they do. So sometimes, I'll look at somebody's business, I'm like, oh yeah, you're not good at this. You've been doing this for a year, but you're trying to charge what people who've been doing it 20 years charge.
Right.
The classic dynamic of somebody jumping out of their job to start a business, but not giving it enough time. And so it's like, if you imagine your business like a hammock that can hold you, and they plant a tree, and as soon as the sprouts come out, they throw the hammock on it and kill it.
Right.
And it just takes time. It takes time to grow. But if you're desperate, because this is the thing. Of course, as an entrepreneur, you need sales. You need people to say yes. There's no ethical issue there. The ethical issues appear when I'm sitting with you and I say, not just I need people to sign up, I need you to sign up.
Right. Yeah, because then it's about your need rather than the client's need. And that's so true. And I can really speak to that, because that was the position I was in when I was doing the business coaching, a good few years ago now. And I was in that position of really needing to make the sale, and it just put pressure on me. And then, it passed on to the potential client, and it didn't feel good. It wasn't good. So this time around, as I've built up my business, I built it up as a side hustle first. And so, now when I have the conversations with people, I don't have that desperate need inside of me. And I think that's really important for, new people who are building up their businesses, to kind of have another way to sustain themselves while they are, so there's not all that financial pressure, because I think it really can be the breaking of some new businesses. So I would always encourage newbies and anyone I worked with to really think of other ways that they can bring in money while they're building up their business, so they're not putting all that pressure on the new business. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's so important. But so here's the thing, like, I feel like this is also then the responsibility of marketing, sales, and business coaches, is first of all, are you really ready to be offering this? And is it too soon? Are you desperate? Because if you bring that desperate, and I've done it too. I mean, I get it. I'm not speaking from something I don't understand. Most of us have done this in business. We've done it in dating, where we were just hungry and desperate and took advantage of situations or people. I mean, we've all, in different areas of our lives, taken advantage of people. There's the predator and the protector are both brought into existence by the same thing, meaning without this thing, they don't exist. And the thing is weakness.
That's really interesting. I'm just letting that sink in. I haven't heard that before. Can you say that again?
That the predator and the protector are both brought into existence by the presence of weakness. Where there is no weakness, there's no predation. There might be battle or conflict, but it's not predation. And there's no protector. There's no need to protect because people are strong. So to say that all another way, both people, I mean, not to essentialize this who they are, but somebody who's maybe in a protective mode or has that more developed capacity, and somebody who's more of a predator on that spectrum, if they walk into a room, they will immediately map out who's got the power. And they know who not to fuck with, and they know who to take advantage of. And this is everywhere from, I've seen this, of course, financially. This is what con men know. Who's financially, economically vulnerable that they could, apply that desperation on. Health hucksters know this, who sell the snake oil. Though I've heard snake oil is actually very beneficial, but, who sell they can see the desperation. Somebody's sitting there with stage 3 cancer, terrified. And this person's standing on stage saying, this will absolutely work, guaranteed. That's a predator.
I mean, that's just another level. That's just like, wow. I don't,
Yeah. But we do it ourselves in business too. We're saying, yes, this coaching program will absolutely help you.
Well, we do until our integrity kicks in and we feel like this is not right. And then we hopefully look for another way. But it was so interesting, the parallel that you drew between, perhaps like religions converting people in olden times and that same process in marketing. I'd never thought of that parallel before, but it's so true, particularly in sales conversations. And it's like, well, my way's right and you have to do it my way, kind of thing, and not taking into account the other person. So I love this conversation. I think it's really, really interesting.
Well, and the thing I would say too, just to tie down the predator protector thing, is the thing that makes a predator, I think it's something to do with hunger. It's like don't ever go grocery shopping when you're starving. It's rule number 1. We all know it because you do, and you buy a bunch of terrible stuff and regret it. So it's the same thing. Don't go into a sales meeting desperate. It's the dig the well before you're thirsty.
Right.
So this idea of developing a business as a side hustle, to me, this has to be part of our job. If we're teaching people how to market or sell, we have to turn some attention to this, of how desperate is this client right now? Because if somebody's like, okay, I just need a lot of money right now, and what can I do? Actually, our primary responsibility is to turn attention to that and say, okay, look, there's a lot of desperation. Could you get a job?
Yeah.
Or a part-time job? Can you borrow money maybe? Could you reduce your expenses. Like, what can you do to take the pressure out of it? Because no matter what marketing tactic I give you at this point, if it's filtered through that hunger and desperation, it's going to land as awful, because your agenda is going to be to get the sale, to get them to say yes. If you're emotionally needy and desperate and you're in a dating situation, this is the thing. People will look at like the books on dating or pickup, and it's easy to dismiss it all, or look at marketing tactics and dismiss them all. But it isn't the tactic. It is where it's coming from. Right. Because you can give me, I haven't had anyone yet give me a tactic that I couldn't find some positive spin on it if the orientation was to get to the truth of if it's a fit. But it's impossible to do that if you're desperate.
I think that's so true. I think it really is part of our role to educate people about that. And it really flies in the face of a lot of the marketing I see. It feels like we're picking on coaches a bit, but it's not necessarily just coaches. But a lot of the things I see in my Facebook feed are like, start your business and have $10,000 months within 3 months. Within 90 days, you can be earning $10,000 through your business. And I just think that is actually really irresponsible, because for the majority of people that certainly isn't going to be the case.
Right. Well, but it's interesting, because I would say I could still see that headline being totally in integrity if the rest of the sales letter was like, look, this is not possible for everyone, but if the following things are true, I feel pretty solid guaranteeing it. So for example, if I were to say, look, if you've got a very clear niche, meaning the following criteria are achieved by that niche or target market. If you've been in business this many years, if you've got an assistant, if you've gotten really good feedback and you don't get many refund requests, if you've got a well mapped out list of hubs and contacts but you just haven't gotten to it, then, and you're in this industry or this kind of thing, then I actually feel pretty confident that we can get you to $10,000 a month. The reason that most people aren't there is because this, here's what I see. And so this is a program on how to fill that gap, or it could be like, look, it's like, I'm a virtual assistant. I'll help you get to $10,000 a month. If all these things are true, my experience is most entrepreneurs, the reason they don't make the money is because they actually just don't have the help. They don't understand the technology and they don't understand the systems to put in place. And I do, and I can do that. And within 12 months, we'll get you to $10,000 or whatever, then I'd be like, that makes sense. So again, it's not like the headline or the pitch is the problem. It's that, there's so little filtering. Like, for example, if I stand in front of a room of 100 people, my intention is to get them all to say yes. There's a ton of shit I can do to do that. There's all the tactics, we may have seen or heard about. I can use the false scarcity, first 27 people to the back of the room, get this deal. Social proof, people just seeing people run to the back and using that. There's all kinds of things I can do. And let's just say I nail it one day. All 100 people sign up. All of my colleagues would look at me just like I'm the king of the world, high fives everywhere. I get the big gold medal belt, the gold medal to wear around my neck, the crown. I'd be a hero. People would be like, you hear about Tag, close 100% of the room. But the reality is maybe 30 to 50%, let's say only like a third of the people are actually a fit for what I'm pitching. Because I didn't care about that. I just wanted everyone to say yes. So what that means, let's say it's a group seminar, then the weekend comes and it's 100 people. And right away, a bunch of them are like, wait a second, this workshop is not a good fit for me. And some of them leave. Some of them ask for refunds, which is the part of the industry a lot of people don't see. Or they just bum out the vibe the whole time.
Yeah. Right.
Versus
everyone else's experience down as well.
Which means that the whole vibe and experience of the weekend is going to be mediocre to poor. And it means that the word of mouth from that weekend will be mediocre to poor. Versus if I stand in front of the room and I'm like, look, I got this weekend workout coming up. It's probably not a fit for everyone, but here's what it is and here's what it's not. Here's who it's for. Here's who it's not for. Here's how I do it. Here's how I don't. Here's the price. There's a special deal if you sign up right now. But frankly, if those things aren't a fit for you, just don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. But if it is a fit, then here's an incentive to, as my way of saying thank you. And frankly, I'd rather just fill it now and not have to worry about it. So that's why I'm doing this. Fine. That's great. And then I get a third of the people, but everyone who's in it is a fit, which means there's no refunds. I don't have to have any energy going there. It's just a great experience, which means the word of mouth becomes this upward spiral. So it's people look at it like, I don't know, somehow like I'm this approach is like what's the word, altruistic,
Right.
or noble or something.
Right.
And maybe there's that too, but fundamentally for me it's a selfish thing. I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
I want to grow my business.
Well, it's better for your business if you're getting good feedback and good experiences are being created, you know.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. And on a lighter note, do you have a favorite method of marketing that you use? I know you said that you could pretty much use anything, but do you have a favorite?
It really depends what it's for. I mean, my favorite method is doing the least possible work that I can do. Whatever allows me to get the biggest result with the least amount of effort is usually my favorite. It does depend. The fundamental overall thing, I mean, I've done like teleseminars. That's probably not my favorite. Intro workshops, I enjoy. Writing sales letters and emails, you know, that's another. But
do you enjoy workshops or you don't? I missed that.
I do. Yeah, I enjoy doing like intro workshops. But, you know, I would say the best, the one I enjoy the most is when other people promote me. It works better, you know. Sure, I can email my own list, but this idea of hub marketing, of people who are already connected to and respected by the people I'm trying to reach, that is just hands down the best form of marketing there is. And it feels better for me because they get to say wonderful things about me and I don't have to like try to pump myself up at all.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying about the networking event, and if you go as a pair and enjoy each other. Yeah, I love that. That's great. And is there anything that you're finding really fun about your marketing at the moment?
Well, I don't know if it's the marketing. It's like I'm just feeling my business model getting increasingly simple. I'm not touring as much, which feels good to just be home. So I've got a mentorship program that has 12 people in it. So that's bringing in enough money that I'm not having to hustle and market as hard. So actually the fact that I'm having to do it less feels really great. Because I mean, this is worth saying. Marketing doesn't actually make you any money. You know, your business model is what makes you money or not. Or profit, I should say, you know. Marketing can bring in clients, but if your business model is terrible, you still lose money.
Right. So if you're marketing something that's broken, it's not gonna, you know, a system that doesn't work or a business model that doesn't work, you can market as much as you like and you still won't be profitable. So
yeah, it's like a bucket that's got all these holes in it. And you can keep pouring water in. But the more exciting thing for me, it's not about the pumping the handle on, you know, the water pump. It's fixing the bucket so that it takes less pumps to fill up the bucket.
Okay, so give some examples, like make that a bit more practical, please.
Sure. You have a website, you know, and people visit it, but there's nowhere for them to put their email to hear from you. That's a leak in the bucket.
Right.
You do an intro workshop, but you never mention your website. You never make an offer for the next step. That's a leak in the bucket. You know, all these people are there and then they just run through your fingers when some of them might have actually wanted to stay in the bucket.
Got it. So you've done all that work to get them there. Yeah. And it's a bit like, you know, your rabbi that you were talking about, or your guy with his 12 people at the meetup and not being able to say anything about the offer. You know, they've done the work, they've pumped the handle, and they've got the water in the bucket, but then there are these holes and people are flowing out without even knowing that there's a way to work with them.
Yeah, it's not just not offering it, it's sometimes not even having anything to offer.
Right.
You know, they say, well, yeah, I'm an astrologer and I do a single session. It's 90 minutes and it costs $100. And then that's it. But they don't do any workshops. They don't offer any online courses. They don't sell any ebooks. They don't offer packages of sessions or a monthly package or yada, yada, yada. There's a bunch of stuff they don't do. And so it's money that's literally just sitting on the table. You know, and in that case, maybe it's not a leaky bucket, but they've got a thimble and it can't hold much water.
Right.
And so to make it
be somebody at the beginning of their business though, couldn't it? Because when a
Sure.
person's right at the beginning, they may not have a whole lot of offerings. So, but then over time they can build up and they can add a group program and they can add
totally,
different things.
which, and I would just say there's nothing inevitable about that happening. I know people have been in business 20 years and they just keep grinding it out and struggling because they still just have the thimble, or they've tried to get they've got all these programs, but there's no connection between them. So nobody even knows that they offer them. You know,
there's no progression, you know, there's no like, well, we've done this and now we need to do this kind of thing.
You know, it's like you're a yoga studio and, you know, your sales funnel would look something like free classes, drop-in classes, packages, you know, workshops, retreats, and then the teacher trainings. But it's possible that you could have all these people going through all your classes and you never even name the fact that you do teacher trainings. You never email your list. You kind of just wait for people to talk to you, or so you put up a poster here and there, and nobody signs up. So that's a leak in the bucket. It's like, oh man, if you were to just every class say, hey, we've got teacher training coming up. If you're interested to come talk to me, that alone, you know. But there's much more sophisticated stuff you can do, you know, where it's like you could just, hey, is anyone here thinking about becoming a yoga teacher? People raise their hands like, hey, come talk to me after class.
And I think it's so important for us to be saying these things, because I think that often conscious entrepreneurs, small green businesses, will just opt for putting a poster up rather than going through the awkwardness of saying something. But actually, it's these businesses are businesses that are doing good, which need to be marketed, need to be supported. And so I think that this work's really, really important.
And the reason we feel so awkward about saying it is because of what we think we're going to have to do. You know, we're terrified that it's like, okay, if I have this conversation, it's going to be awkward because the thrust of the conversation is going to be me trying to convince them. Because that's the only thing we know how to do, or the only thing we've been told or imagine, or, you know, if we realize like, oh, actually just, you know, having the conversation is literally just having an exploratory conversation to see if there's a fit or not, then it's like, hey, I've got this program coming up. I really don't know if it's a fit for you, but I notice I'm really excited about the thought of you being in it, and it seems relevant to what you're going through. Can we take a few minutes to talk about it? There's no, I'm not convinced it's going to be a help, but, you know, and then you sit down, you're talking about, you're like, look, here's what it is. It's this many weeks. I've got this content. It's this price point. When I look at your business and your situation, this is the connection that I see, because you're really struggling with this, and this program is really designed to help you kind of fill that gap. And yeah, how does that sound? Do you have any questions? You know, it's just, there is an art to having this, you know, like I've got a couple products on my own website of the transcript from my call with Mark Silver and one with Greg Faxon about this. So, I mean, there's a lot that can go into but this is the thing, you know, whether you get it for me or somebody else, and sales is not a thing I feel particularly adroit with in terms of those conversations, because I just don't do them a lot. But part of why we feel so awkward is because we're freestyling the conversation. We're entering it with no structure in mind. And if you enter with like, oh, this is where the discovery session, again, that whole format of the discovery session of where do you want to be, where are you now, what's in the gap, here's how I can help you. If that's coming from the agenda to get the sale, it will always feel gross and uncomfortable. But if it's coming from the agenda to see if there's a fit, it's going to feel good. And it also, having that kind of a structure, or knowing like, first I do this and then I do this, like there is an architecture to the call.
Right.
But that architecture is in service of the goal of figuring out if it's a fit. There is something that's a huge relief of like, okay, I'm not just picking up the phone and being like, I don't know, you want to sign up or what? You know, where you say, look, okay, so in this call, you know, I'd love to just spend a few minutes. I just want to get to know you a little bit, hear a bit about your story. Then at that point, I'd love to find out what your goals are. I'd love to hear about where you're going. I'd love to sort of see if we can figure out what's in the gap and if this program might be a fit. If it is, you know, I'll tell you more about the program. And if not, there may be some other resources that I could refer to you, you know. And so we'll take a few minutes to talk about that at the end. For example, you know, you just give like a very rough outline like that. You get to just relax inside of that, knowing like, okay, now we have a structure that is going to hold both of us in this conversation. and you suddenly don't feel so awkward about it. It's like, yeah, let's set up a call.
Well, it
Because
takes
I know how.
the pressure off, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
I love the reframe from, trying to sell, or the reframe from convincing to filtering. I really like that. It has a whole different feel to it. So, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing I would say too with the discovery session is like, before they even get on the phone for a discovery session, you filter them. It's like, hey, before you book the discovery session to talk to me about working with me on this program or signing up for this program, I want to make sure you understand what this program is. So it's you have a sense it's a base, or my coaching or whatever. Here's my philosophy. Here's who I am. Here's what I'm really good at. And if none of that feels like a fit, don't book the call.
Yeah, because we've spoken about this, about saying about your philosophy up front before they even get on the call with you, rather than going through it all when they're on the call with you.
It's maddening. I hired a therapist, or booked a session with a trauma therapist because she worked on brain spotting, was this modality, and I didn't know much about it, but I figured I would check it out. It was $180, but she was referred by a friend. Yeah, and the whole session, like the first half, she was just going over the ethics of my psychotherapy practice, or this, and here's the, and it was just like, and finally halfway through, I think she could tell I was annoyed, and I was just like, and she asked me, I said, you could have emailed me this. There could have been a video that would have covered this. Why am I spending $180 for this?
Right. What did she say?
It was a very unsatisfying. She was like, I can see how you would feel that way. It's just this very standard, like, I'm not going to take on your upset. That's yours. I won't own it. But I was just like, rah, I left so cranky. So that filtering is also in service to the client. Peter Drucker has the line where he says, the purpose of marketing is to make selling redundant. That's the goal. People just call you, say, I want to sign up.
I want to work with you. Yeah.
I want to work with you.
They already have read your philosophy. They know your approach and everything else. Cool. I think we should probably wrap up soon because we've been talking.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. And just a couple of things to finish off. Quick top 3 tips for anyone struggling with their marketing, if you can do that.
Oh, man.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the 3... Yeah, I'll give sort of big picture 3 generic ones. One is, we've already talked about it. Really, whenever you're writing any kind of marketing material, coming up with a marketing strategy, selling, keep coming back to this orientation of, will this help me figure out if it's a fit or not? Is this process going to guide myself and the client to the truth of if it's a fit? If it's going to do that, double down on it. If it's not, throw it out. Cool. Number 2 is really get clear on what your niche is, because this whole, and niche and point of view, I would say, I've got a book, The Niching Master, one called Point of View Marketing, that go into this, because it's so easy to say, oh yeah, figure out if it's a fit, go for the truth of that. But everything hinges on what do we mean by fit, and that comes down to niche and point of view, which are to me similar things. It's like, what's the role you want to be known for in the marketplace? What are you offering? What don't you offer? How do you offer? How don't you? Who's it for? Who's it not for? All that. Mm-hmm. Them knowing what's your point of view, because let's say you're a hardcore raw vegan. Somebody who's a hardcore raw paleo person probably wants to know that before they book to see you as a naturopath. That might be the thing that has them not want to see you, which is perfect.
Yeah.
So clarifying that. And then the third thing is this hubs piece. And this is, I don't know, 2 weeks or something, this ebook will be done on hub marketing. But the idea of instead of trying to convince people to work with you where there's no previous relationship, to ask yourself, okay, these people I want to reach, who's already reaching them? And can you build relationships with those people? So for example, the difference between just going to a random networking event and meeting a bunch of people versus you go to that networking event and you talk to the host. Maybe the host is, hopefully you know the host already. You've built a relationship with the host. And you say, hey, who should I connect with? Would you introduce me? That's a better strategy. The difference between you just emailing your list all the time and you find somebody else who's got a list of people for your people and inviting them to do that. Or instead of you just hosting and emailing your list about your own workshop, somebody else hosts a workshop for you and fills it with their own people.
Yeah.
Instead of writing it,
Helpful, right?
yeah, instead of writing an article and just putting it on your website, you find a website like, elephantjournal.com and Messine or medium.com or Huffington Post, and you post that article there. It will just guarantee to get a lot more traction. So it's that kind of thing.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you. And how can people find out more about you?
The main place is marketingforhippies.com. And like you said, there's a bunch of free stuff there. And if people are struggling with their niche, nichingspiral.com is the other place to find me.
Okay, cool. And is there anything at all you would like to add?
What a pleasure to talk to you. What an amazing, strange thing that you're on the other side of the planet right now.
Yeah, and it's really late here, but I really wanted to do this interview. So, I appreciate it. And it's great to talk to you too.
You too.
I've enjoyed it. So thank you.
Good wishes on your next steps in your business.
Thank you so much. Bye. Okay.